Tonight, an unprecedented event here at Local 4. For the next hour, we're going to take a difficult, thoughtful, and informative look at the opioid epidemic in our community.
We are incredibly committed to helping fight this crisis, and our program will be uninterrupted by commercials.
It is only one part of an ongoing effort by WDIV Local 4 to bring awareness to this addiction.
It's the epidemic we whisper about the honor student whose focus turned from their future to their next fix, about the family whose safe haven turned into a house of lies and suspicion when drugs came through the door, about the long-lost friend whose overdose turned their Facebook page into a memorial. Heroin, OxyContin, fentanyl. America's addiction to opioids is playing out right down the street, sometimes right down the hall. In its grip, every type of person you can imagine. Successful people, funny people, moms, dads, grandparents, injured athletes, cancer patients, war veterans. Chances are greater than ever you know someone directly affected.
This is a real crisis in the United States.
So tonight, loudly and with empathy, we ask questions with no easy answers. Why are opioids so hard to quit? Where can addicts and their loved ones turn for help?
If you're out there and you feel that way, there is hope.
What responsibility do doctors have? Are elected leaders paying more than lip service? How can we stop the flow of these drugs into our communities? In the next hour, we'll hear from the people on the front lines of the epidemic, addicts and their families, doctors, lawmakers, Border Patrol agents, even a former dealer. It is time to stop whispering. Because in a nation hooked on opioids, just say no is just not that simple. We're glad you're with us tonight. We are not going to throw a lot of numbers at you this evening because this is about people.
But there is one figure that jumps out and puts this crisis into perspective. Back in 2005, 15,000 Americans died of an opioid overdose. In 2015, 33,000. For the first time in our nation's history, heroin is killing more people than guns.
But the death toll itself doesn't tell half the story. We don't have the numbers on the lost jobs, the broken marriages, the children who've been sent into foster care by this crisis.
There is a lot of ground to cover on this. Here to help us are Dr. Frank McGeorge, live at the Henry Ford Hospital Emergency Room, and Local 4 Defender Karen Drew standing by in our phone bank staffed with addiction experts.
Let's begin tonight, though, with a look at how we became Opioid Nation.
My 63-year-old mother was strangled and killed on Mother's Day. I'm 100% responsible for that. I brought this madness into her life. I stand before you as a person who has to live with that fact for the rest of his life.
Yes, Michael De Leon and so many others. Once upon a time, our view of the opioid problem was largely confined to street junkies trapped in a heroin web of their own making. Hollow eyes and needle-marked arms tucked away in sordid drug houses, headed for deaths that would be just as hidden as their lives, but no longer.
When I talk about it with people, they have no idea that there's heroin in Macomb County. Or, I can't even imagine my child ever doing that. Guess what? I thought the same thing.
I come from a typical all-American family. Not divorced, no strife in the family. Soccer coach, did all the right things, went to church, we had dinner, we read to our children, all those things. My son became an opioid addict.
Opioid addiction has traded addresses, from that hidden drug house to an enormous home on Main Street. But how in the world did we get here? Unlike the images we've long been fed of alcohol and tobacco having a kind of glamour, in films like Trainspotting, with Ewan McGregor searching the worst toilet in Scotland for his suppository of heroin, there has never been anything glamorous or appealing about the Big H. And legions of Americans who could never imagine themselves plunging a needle into their arm have shocked themselves by their ability, nay, their hunger, to do just that. Now, no doubt, many heroin users do follow the old path of seeking a bigger and better high after starting with other drugs. But for so many, the gateway isn't an alley. It's in healthcare.
About 75% of heroin, those who use heroin, did so after abusing prescription opioids to treat pain.
Pain management is an enormous issue for far too many Americans. There are now entire clinics devoted solely to easing pain. A study from 2015 found that 1 out of every 3 Americans took an opioid for pain management. 1 out of 3. That's almost 92 million Americans using drugs like OxyContin and Vicodin. And drug overdoses now claim more American lives than car crashes. Consider in 2012, there were 259 million prescriptions written for opioids. That's enough for every American adult to get a bottle of opioid pills. Now, if you didn't take any, don't worry, it means there are 2 for someone else. But we ignore such signs.
Nobody thinks this is going to happen to them.
It's not strictly an American problem, but it is awfully red, white, and blue. Americans consume 80% of the world's opioid supply. Poor and unemployed people are at particular risk of falling into the opioid abyss. And those are communities with higher rates of arthritis and diabetes. Some believe it's proof of the need for better health care options for the poor. But others point out that with patients, rich or poor, doctors have become far too comfortable sending them home with these very powerful, very addictive drugs. But a lot of this is on us, isn't it? Maybe our ancestors were willing to bite down on a bullet to get through an amputation, but whether it's agonizing chronic back pain or just having a wisdom tooth out, a lot of people don't really want to tolerate pain.
I can show you a textbook. In fact, I went to conferences 10 years ago. They used to tell primary care doctors, all physicians, that there was no limit on opioids, that if you get tolerant, you just keep going up. And now I look at that and I say, oh my God, how stupid were we?